Have you ever watched someone, maybe even yourself, get completely knocked off balance by something that, in the grand scheme of things, is incredibly small? A stinging comment from a coworker that ruins your entire day. A sudden traffic jam that sends you into a spiral of frustration, making you late for an appointment you were genuinely excited about. That moment when a carefully laid plan falls apart and you feel that surge of anger or anxiety, that feeling of your entire emotional world being completely shattered by a minor inconvenience. It happens to the best of us. Now just pause for a second and ask yourself a powerful question. What if you didn't have to react that way? What if you possessed an unshakable inner foundation, an unbreakable frame that allowed you to withstand the chaos, the pressure, the unexpected blows that life inevitably throws at you, not by becoming cold or emotionless, but by becoming profoundly strong and centered? This isn't a fantasy or a superpower reserved for fictional heroes. This is the practical, life-changing promise of Stoicism. Forget any idea you might have of it being a dry, dusty philosophy for academics debating in ivory towers. Stoicism is at its heart a warrior's toolkit for the mind. It was forged in the fires of real human struggle by people who faced exile, war, political turmoil, and profound personal loss. They weren't seeking to escape reality. They were seeking to master their perception of it, to build a fortress of character from within that no external event could ever breach. They understood that while we can't always control what happens to us, we have absolute authority over how we choose to interpret those events and how we respond. And in this video, that's exactly what we're going to equip you with. We are about to dive deep into 25 powerful, actionable Stoic techniques designed to forge that unbreakable character within you. These are not just abstract ideas, they are mental drills, perspective shifts, and daily practices that, when applied, systematically strengthen your resolve, sharpen your judgment, and cultivate a profound sense of inner peace. We're going to explore how to prepare for adversity before it strikes, how to reframe setbacks as opportunities for growth, and how to maintain your composure in the middle of any storm. This is a journey into building a version of yourself that is resilient, focused, and truly free. So, if you're ready to stop being at the mercy of your circumstances and start commanding your inner world with confidence and wisdom, you are in the right place. Let's begin. The very first and most essential technique for building an unbreakable frame is mastering what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control. This is the cornerstone, the bedrock upon which every other Stoic practice is built. It begins with a simple but life-altering act of sorting. You take every single thing in your life, every event, every circumstance, every interaction, and you place it into one of two distinct categories. In the first category are the things that are completely within your power. What exactly falls into this category? Your own opinions, your judgments, your intentions, your desires, your aversions. In short, your voluntary choices and actions. This is your inner citadel, the only true territory over which you have absolute command. The second category contains everything else in the entire universe. This includes your body's health, your reputation, your wealth, the actions of other people, the weather, whether you get that promotion or if a flight gets cancelled. These are things that are not entirely within your power. They are influenced by countless external factors, by chance, by the choices of others. The profound peace and immense power of Stoicism comes from learning to direct all of your energy and attention exclusively to that first category. The things you control, while accepting the second category with a calm and graceful indifference. Let's make this incredibly practical. Imagine you're driving to an incredibly important job interview, one you've prepared for extensively. You leave with what you believe is plenty of time. Then you encounter a massive, unexpected traffic jam. Your heart starts to race. You feel frustration boiling into anger. You white-knuckle the steering wheel, desperately looking for a way out that doesn't exist. In this moment, the untrained mind spirals. It attacks the situation, it rages against the other drivers, it catastrophizes about missing the interview and ruining your chances. This emotional storm is a direct result of focusing on what you cannot control: the traffic, the timing, the interviewer's potential reaction. Now apply the dichotomy of control. What is actually within your power right now? You cannot control the traffic, that is firmly in the second category, but you can control your judgment about the situation. You can choose not to see it as a catastrophic personal offense, but simply as a neutral event, a traffic jam. You can control your response. You can take a deep breath. You can use the time to calmly review your notes for the interview one more time. You can control your action. You can call the interviewer's office, explain the situation politely, and let them know you'll be there as soon as possible. By shifting your focus entirely to your own choices, your attitude, your breath, your preparation, your communication, you reclaim your power. The traffic jam hasn't changed, but your experience of it has been utterly transformed. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are the commander of your response. This principle applies to criticism as well. If someone levels a harsh critique at you, their words and their opinion are not within your control. You can't force them to think differently, but your assessment of their critique, whether you take it to heart or dismiss it, whether you react defensively or with thoughtful consideration, that is 100% yours to command. When you internalize this dichotomy, you stop giving away your emotional energy to things you can never command. You stop being constantly battered by external events because you've built your foundation on the one thing that cannot be taken from you: your power to choose your response. This is the first and most critical step in forging an unbreakable frame. Now, equipped with the fundamental understanding of what we can and cannot control, we move to a second technique that may initially seem counterintuitive, even unsettling. It's called negative visualization, or by its powerful Latin name, premeditatio malorum, which means the premeditation of evils. Think of this not as a descent into gloom, but as a mental gymnasium where you intentionally and courageously strengthen your emotional resilience. The core practice is this: you regularly set aside time to vividly imagine losing the things you cherish most in your life. Your career, your physical well-being, a cherished relationship, your financial security. You don't just briefly acknowledge the possibility, you immerse yourself in the scenario. You picture the moment your manager calls you into the office to let you go. You feel the shock, the sinking feeling in your stomach. You imagine the phone call delivering difficult health news, or the painful ending of a deep connection with someone you love. The crucial step is to then sit with that discomfort, to breathe through the temporary emotional storm you've conjured, and then to arrive at a profound realization: you are still here. You are still you. The world has not ended. Your core character remains intact. This exercise is the polar opposite of the naive optimism that assumes everything will always work out for the best. That kind of thinking makes you fragile, because when misfortune inevitably strikes, it feels like a unique and devastating betrayal by the universe. Premeditatio malorum, on the other hand, inoculates you. By regularly visiting these potential losses in the safe space of your mind, you build up a psychological immunity. When a real setback occurs, it's not a shocking first-time visitor. It's a scenario you've already faced and overcome in your imagination, which dramatically reduces its power to paralyze you. This practice also serves a second, equally beautiful purpose. It ignites a deep and authentic gratitude for the present moment. By mentally removing the people and things you value, you are forced to see them not as permanent fixtures you're entitled to, but as precious, temporary gifts. After spending a few minutes visualizing life without your partner, when you see them next, your appreciation for their presence is instantly magnified. After contemplating the loss of your health, the simple ability to take a walk outside can feel like a magnificent privilege. This isn't pessimism, it's lucid, clear-eyed appreciation. The Stoics weren't trying to make us miserable by thinking about loss. They were trying to shock us into a state of profound thankfulness for what we have right now, precisely because we understand it may not always be here. It transforms ordinary life from a series of entitlements into a continuous stream of gifts, making you not only tougher but also significantly more joyful and present in your daily existence. Building upon the mental resilience cultivated through negative visualization, we arrive at a technique that represents the ultimate evolution of the Stoic mindset, Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This is not merely about accepting or enduring what life throws at you. Acceptance can sometimes carry a hint of resignation, a quiet sigh of putting up with something unpleasant. Amor Fati is radically different. It is an active, enthusiastic embrace of every single event, especially the obstacles, the setbacks, and the hardships. It's the decision to see every occurrence without exception, not as a barrier to your happiness but as an essential ingredient for it. To understand the sheer power of this concept, we can look to one of history's most renowned Stoics, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Here was a man who ruled the known world, yet his personal journals, now known as meditations, are filled with reminders to welcome difficulty. He famously wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. For Marcus, a political betrayal wasn't a reason for despair, it was a chance to practice justice and forgiveness. A painful illness wasn't a curse, it was an opportunity to practice courage and patience. A difficult person in his court wasn't an annoyance, they were a training partner sent to sharpen his character. He actively reframed every obstacle as fuel for his own growth, treating adversity not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a teacher to be heeded. So how do we practice this in our own, less imperial lives? It begins with a conscious shift in perspective. Imagine you're working on a crucial project and a key team member suddenly quits. The immediate, untrained reaction might be panic, frustration, and anger. You see this event as a catastrophic disruption, a force working against you. Now apply Amor Fati. Instead of fighting this new reality, you lean into it. You say to yourself, "Good, this is exactly what needs to happen. This departure will force me to develop new skills I've been neglecting. It will reveal strengths in other team members I hadn't noticed. It will teach me how to be more adaptable and resilient in the face of unexpected change." This isn't delusional positivity. It's a strategic recognition that growth rarely occurs in perfect conditions. It happens precisely when our plans are disrupted. This practice transforms your entire relationship with challenge. When you start to love your fate, setbacks lose their power to derail you. A failed business venture is no longer just a failure. It's a masterclass in what doesn't work, providing invaluable lessons for the next attempt. A heartbreak is not just a source of pain, it's a deep education in love, loss, and the contours of your own heart, teaching you what you truly value in a partner. By embracing Amor Fati, you build a frame that doesn't just withstand difficulty. It metabolizes it, using the energy of the obstacle to become stronger, wiser, and more capable. The goal is to reach a point where you can look at any event in your life, past or present, and genuinely feel that you wouldn't have it any other way because it has contributed to the person you are becoming. This is the mark of a truly unbreakable character. Following the profound practice of embracing our fate, we now turn to a technique that offers an immediate and breathtaking shift in perspective, known as the view from above. When you find yourself consumed by a problem, caught in a spiral of worry or irritation, this exercise is like hitting a mental reset button that recalibrates your entire sense of scale. It involves a deliberate act of imagination where you progressively pull your viewpoint back farther and farther until the issue that felt so massive is seen in its true, often minuscule context. Begin by closing your eyes for a moment and picturing the situation causing you stress. It might be a tense disagreement in a meeting room or anxiety about a financial decision. Now, in your mind's eye, rise up, float above the building you're in. See the streets, the other buildings, the tiny cars moving like ants. Notice how your specific location is just one small part of a much larger city. Continue to ascend. See the entire cityscape shrink into a patchwork of light and shadow. Your country comes into view, then the continent, surrounded by vast oceans. From this height, borders are invisible. It's just one planet, a beautiful, fragile-looking sphere hanging in the immense blackness of space. This is the crucial moment of the exercise. From this cosmic vantage point, look back and try to locate your own worry. That argument, that bill, that social slight, where is it? It has become impossibly small, a microscopic event on a tiny speck of rock orbiting an average star in a remote galaxy. This isn't meant to make you feel insignificant in a depressing way, but rather to liberate you. It reveals that the immense weight you've assigned to a problem is a construction of your own mind, a product of being too close to it. The view from above dissolves that artificial weight by providing the ultimate objective reality check. Consider a common example. You're rushing through an airport, frantic because your flight is delayed and you might miss a connection. Your heart is pounding, your thoughts are racing with catastrophic outcomes. Now apply the view. From a few hundred miles up, that entire airport is a barely visible dot. The intricate web of flight paths across the globe looks like a delicate, temporary pattern. The urgency you feel evaporates when contrasted with the slow, majestic turn of the Earth itself. This doesn't mean the delay is irrelevant, but the panicked life or death intensity surrounding it is shown to be entirely disproportionate. It allows you to return to the situation with a calm clarity, able to address the practical steps, rebooking the flight, making a phone call, without the suffocating emotional drama. The true power of this technique lies in its ability to build a frame that is grounded in reality, not in the amplified narratives of our fears. When your sense of self is tied to these tiny, transient dramas, you are fragile. But when you regularly practice expanding your perspective, you anchor your identity in something much larger and more stable. You begin to carry this cosmic viewpoint with you throughout your day. A harsh email isn't a world-ending crisis. It's a few words on a screen, a brief moment in the long arc of your life. A moment of embarrassment isn't a permanent stain on your character. It's a fleeting event that will be forgotten by everyone, including yourself, in short order. By repeatedly visiting the view from above, you cultivate a deep-seated patience and equanimity, realizing that most of what we sweat and worry about simply doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. This mental spaciousness is the hallmark of an unbreakable frame, one that remains steady because it understands its true place in the vast and wondrous universe. Having established that expansive cosmic perspective, we now bring our focus back down to earth, to the quiet and personal space of your own mind at the end of the day. The next technique is one of the most practical and transformative tools in the Stoic arsenal, the practice of nightly journaling, specifically what the Stoics called an evening review. This is far more than simply writing down what happened during your day. Think of it less as keeping a diary and more as conducting a daily debrief with your most important employer, yourself. It is an active, disciplined form of self-coaching designed to reinforce your progress and systematically strengthen your character. The power of this practice lies in its structure. You aren't just aimlessly recounting events, you are asking yourself a series of targeted, powerful questions that force honest self-assessment. The Stoics, like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, didn't just muse in their journals, they interrogated their own performance. The first question to pose to yourself each night is this: what did I do well today? Where did I act with virtue, even in a small way? This isn't about arrogant self-congratulation. It's about recognizing and reinforcing positive behavior. Maybe you managed to hold your tongue in a heated discussion when you would have normally snapped. Perhaps you showed kindness to a stranger, or you persevered through a difficult task without complaint. By consciously identifying these moments, you are wiring your brain to recognize and repeat acts of courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. You are actively building the neural pathways of your Stoic frame. The second and equally crucial question is this: where did I fall short? Where did my emotions control me instead of the other way around? This requires brutal honesty and a complete lack of self-judgment. The goal is not to punish yourself, but to diagnose with the calm detachment of a scientist studying an experiment. Did a minor criticism from a colleague send you into a spiral of resentment for hours? Did you succumb to anxiety and procrastinate on an important decision? By pinpointing the exact moment your frame cracked, you bring the problem out of the shadows and into the light. You transform a vague feeling of failure into a specific, addressable event. This act of non-judgmental observation is incredibly empowering. You are no longer a slave to unconscious reactions. You are becoming the observer of those reactions, which is the first step toward mastering them. This leads directly to the third and most forward-looking question: how can I improve tomorrow? Based on today's review, what is one specific thing I can do differently? This turns reflection into preparation. If you notice that you lost your patience when interrupted during focused work, your plan for tomorrow might be to schedule a dedicated, do not disturb block of time. If you saw that you worried excessively about an event you cannot control, your plan might be to consciously practice the dichotomy of control the moment that worry arises. This final step closes the loop. You've identified a strength to reinforce, a weakness to understand, and you've created a concrete strategy for the next day. This turns journaling from a passive record into an active training regimen. Consider a real-world scenario. Your day was going smoothly until a last-minute request from your boss derailed your evening plans. Internally, you felt a surge of anger, but you bit your tongue and complied. Later, however, you were short-tempered with your family. During your evening review, you would note the strength. You exercised restraint with your boss, which was a virtuous act of professional discipline. Then you'd identify the failure. You allowed the suppressed frustration to leak out onto your family, who deserved your best self. Finally, you'd formulate your plan. Tomorrow, if a similar situation arises, you will take 60 seconds alone to acknowledge the frustration mentally, accept the change of plans with Amor Fati, and consciously decide to leave the emotion at the office door before interacting with your family. This nightly audit solidifies the lessons of the day, tracks your progress over time, and ensures that every single day, no matter how challenging, becomes a deliberate step toward building that unbreakable frame. This technique, which the Stoics placed at the very center of their philosophy, is called objective judgment, and it is the master skill of emotional self-defense. Think of it as learning to see the world with the calm, impartial eyes of a scientist observing data, rather than through the fiery, personal lens of a protagonist in a drama. The core insight is deceptively simple, yet life-altering. The majority of our suffering is not caused by events themselves, but by the labels, stories, and judgments we instantly and often unconsciously attach to those events. An external event is neutral until our mind assigns it a value: good, bad, insulting, threatening, unfair. It is this second step, this rapid-fire internal commentary, that actually generates our emotional turmoil. The classic Stoic example, one you can apply within seconds, revolves around criticism or insult. The common, untrained experience goes like this: someone says something harsh to you. In a flash, your mind processes this not as a mere event, but as a personal attack. You hear the statement, and you instantly judge it as an insult. That label carries a tremendous charge. It feels like a violation, an injustice. Your body reacts, your heart rate increases, your face flushes, you feel anger or hurt. But the Stoics urge us to pause that automatic process and dissect what actually happened with total objectivity. The raw, unfiltered fact is this: a person made sounds with their vocal cords, which traveled through the air as vibrations, and your eardrums registered those vibrations. That is the objective event. The statement, "they insulted me," is not a fact. It is your interpretation, your judgment. You have taken a neutral occurrence and painted it with a value-laden brush. The practice, then, is to consciously redescribe events in stark, neutral language. Instead of thinking, "My boss criticized me unfairly," you train yourself to state the bare facts. "My boss said the report contained errors and needs to be revised." Instead of fuming, "This traffic jam is ruining my entire day," you note, "Cars on this roadway are moving well below the average speed." This shift in language is not mere wordplay, it is a profound cognitive intervention. By stripping away the judgment, you disarm the emotional trigger. The words "unfairly" and "ruining my day" are the fuel for your anger and frustration. When you remove them, all that's left is a situation to be handled. The report has errors, it needs fixing. The cars are slow, you will be late. These are practical problems, not existential crises. Let's make this vividly practical with a scenario you might face. Imagine you send a detailed proposal to a colleague for feedback, and you receive a reply that is just one line: "This needs a lot more work." The untrained mind immediately leaps into action. It judges the comment as dismissive, ungrateful, or harsh. It weaves a story: "They don't respect my effort. They think I'm incompetent. This is so unfair after all the time I put in." This narrative spiral generates feelings of defensiveness, resentment, and anxiety. Now apply objective judgment. Describe the event with clinical neutrality. A text message appeared on my screen. It contained the sentence, "This needs a lot more work." That's it. That is the complete objective reality. There is no inherent hostility or fairness in those words. Those qualities exist only in your interpretation. By holding onto this neutral description, you create a crucial gap between the event and your reaction. In that space, you regain your power to choose a response. You can now ask productive questions. What specific parts need work? What are their criteria? Instead of reacting to the phantom insult you perceived. This practice builds a frame that is responsive to reality itself, not to the often distorted funhouse mirror of our perceptions. Most of our interpersonal conflicts and much of our inner anguish are fueled by these faulty judgments. We feel attacked when no attack was intended. We see catastrophe where there is only a minor setback. By practicing objective judgment daily, you begin to catch your mind in the act of embellishing reality. You learn to question your initial interpretations. Was that look from a stranger actually one of contempt, or were they just squinting against the sun? Was your friend's short reply a sign of anger, or were they simply preoccupied with a problem of their own? This skill cultivates a profound sense of inner peace because you are no longer being yanked around by every random event and your own hair-triggered judgments about them. You start to see the world more clearly, and in that clarity, you find the stability and strength of a frame that is built on what is actually true, rather than on the stories we tell ourselves. Moving from the mental discipline of journaling, we now encounter a technique that is deeply physical, an active training of the body and spirit that the Stoics called practicing misfortune. This idea is often misunderstood. It is not about seeking out pain for its own sake or engaging in pointless self-punishment. Instead, think of it as a form of psychological and emotional inoculation. Just as a vaccine introduces a small, controlled dose of a virus to build your body's immunity, practicing misfortune introduces manageable doses of discomfort to build your soul's resilience. The goal is to voluntarily step into situations that are slightly challenging or unpleasant, proving to yourself through direct experience that you are far stronger and more capable than your comfort-loving mind would have you believe. The logic behind this practice is profound. We spend most of our lives building a fortress of comfort around ourselves, seeking the path of least resistance. We crave warmth, constant satiety, endless entertainment, and the approval of others, but in doing so, we make ourselves incredibly fragile. What happens when the central heating fails on a cold night, when a business lunch runs long and you miss a meal, when you have to wear an outfit that isn't your preferred style to an important event? For the person who has never ventured outside their comfort zone, these minor inconveniences can feel like major crises. They trigger disproportionate amounts of anxiety, frustration, and a sense of being victimized. The person who has practiced misfortune, however, meets these same events with a calm shrug. They have already faced these discomforts on their own terms and discovered that they are not only survivable but can even be empowering. So, what does this look like in practical, safe terms? The opportunities are endless and can be seamlessly integrated into your daily life. One of the most accessible methods is to deliberately alter your relationship with temperature. Instead of always taking a perfectly warm shower, end your next one with 30 seconds of cold water. Don't just endure it, pay close attention to the sensation. Observe your instinct to gasp and tense up, and then consciously choose to relax your body and steady your breathing. This small act trains your willpower in a direct physical way. It teaches you that an initial shock does not have to lead to panic, that you can remain composed even when your environment is challenging. Skipping a single meal or choosing a simpler, plainer meal than you're used to is another powerful exercise. When the hunger pangs arrive, instead of immediately reaching for a snack, sit with the feeling. Recognize that hunger is a temporary sensation, not an emergency. This practice builds the mental muscle of delayed gratification and proves that your well-being isn't hostage to your stomach's every demand. You can even practice this with your appearance. Choose a day to wear clothing that is perfectly functional and presentable, but perhaps not your most fashionable or flattering outfit. Go through your day observing any self-conscious thoughts that arise. Notice the impulse to explain your choice or to feel lesser in some way. Then consciously let those thoughts go. This exercise weakens the power of external validation and strengthens your sense of self-worth from within. It demonstrates that your confidence does not depend on the fabric you wear or the opinions of strangers. The key in all of these practices is intentionality. You are not a victim of circumstance, you are the architect of this minor challenge. You are in control from start to finish, which transforms the experience from one of suffering into one of strength training. The ultimate benefit of this voluntary discomfort is the unshakable confidence it builds. When a real, unexpected hardship strikes, a financial setback, a professional rejection, a period of genuine scarcity, you are not facing it for the first time. You have a deep-seated memory etched into your nervous system of handling difficulty. You can recall the feeling of the cold water and the realization that you were okay. You can remember the hunger that passed and the discovery that you were still capable and focused. These lived experiences become a personal library of evidence against the voice of fear that screams, "I can't handle this." You have already handled similar, if smaller, versions of adversity. This knowledge forges a frame that is not theoretical but proven, a confidence born not from empty affirmations but from concrete action. You learn to wear discomfort lightly, knowing it is a temporary state that you have the power to navigate with grace and fortitude. Now, after training ourselves to see the world objectively and even voluntarily embracing discomfort, we arrive at a technique that is breathtakingly simple in its execution, yet monumental in its impact. It's called the Stoic pause, and you can think of it as installing a mental circuit breaker between the world's provocations and your personal power grid. In the heat of any challenging moment, there exists a fragile, critical space, a sliver of time between the initial stimulus and your ultimate response. For most of us, that space is virtually non-existent. An insult lands and anger fires back like a lightning strike. A frustrating email arrives and a snarky reply is sent before we've even fully processed the words. We are wired for reactivity. The Stoic pause is the deliberate, conscious act of expanding that space. It is the simple, profound decision to take just one deep, intentional breath before you do or say anything at all. This single breath is far more than a physiological act of inhaling and exhaling. It is a declaration of sovereignty over your own mind. In that brief moment, you are actively halting the automatic, emotional cascade that evolution has hardwired into you, the famous fight or flight response. You are inserting a wedge of consciousness into an otherwise unconscious process. That breath creates a pocket of stillness, a temporary sanctuary where your higher faculties, your reason and your wisdom, have a chance to catch up to the rapid-fire alarms of your emotions. It is in this quiet gap that you reclaim your power to choose. Instead of being a puppet whose strings are pulled by external events, you become the puppeteer, deciding which string to pull and with what force. Let's make this immediately practical with a scenario that is all too common. You're in a team meeting presenting an idea you're passionate about. A colleague interrupts you, publicly challenging your proposal with what feels like a dismissive and slightly arrogant tone. The stimulus is clear, their words and their tone. The immediate, untrained reaction is a surge of heat to your face, a tightening in your chest, and a powerful urge to retaliate, to defend your idea with equal force, to point out the flaws in their argument, perhaps even to make a personal jab to re-establish your dominance. This is the path of reactivity. It feels justified in the moment, but it often leads to regrettable words, damaged relationships, and a meeting that spirals into unproductive conflict. Now apply the Stoic pause. The moment you hear the challenging comment and feel that initial jolt of anger, you do not engage. You do not even form your first sentence in your head. Instead, you turn your attention inward. You take one slow, deliberate breath. You feel the air fill your lungs and you feel it leave your body. This might take 3 or 4 seconds in total. In that tiny window, several powerful things happen. First, the physiological rush of adrenaline begins to subside slightly, allowing your heart rate to steady. Second, you create just enough distance from the event to apply the previous techniques we've discussed. You might quickly assess the situation with objective judgment. My colleague stated a contrary opinion. That is the neutral fact. You might invoke the dichotomy of control. I cannot control their tone or their interruption, but I have absolute control over my response. You might even whisper Amor Fati to yourself, seeing this challenge as an opportunity to practice grace under pressure. Having created this space, you are now no longer reacting from a place of wounded ego. You are responding from a place of centered strength. Instead of a defensive retort, you might choose to say, "Thank you for raising that point. Could you elaborate a bit more on your concern so I can fully understand it?" This response is transformative. It de-escalates the situation immediately. It demonstrates confidence and poise. It makes you look strong and in control because you are. You have not been knocked off balance. You have used the obstacle as a way to showcase your unbreakable frame. The entire dynamic of the interaction shifts because you introduced a pause where normally there would only be a collision. The true mastery of this technique lies in making it a default setting for your nervous system. It starts with practicing in low-stakes environments. When the barista gets your coffee order wrong, take a breath before you speak. When your child spills a drink, take a breath before you react. Each time you successfully implement the pause, you are strengthening a neural pathway, training your brain that the space between stimulus and response is your domain of choice. Over time, this pause becomes instantaneous and instinctive, a deeply ingrained part of your character. It is the ultimate tool for preventing the moments we all regret: the harsh words spoken in anger, the impulsive decision made in fear, the opportunity for connection lost to pride. By mastering the Stoic pause, you ensure that your actions are not reckless reactions, but powerful, chosen responses that consistently reflect the strong and resilient character you are building every single day. This next technique moves beyond simply managing our own reactions and invites us to consult a powerful internal compass, a practice known as the contemplation of the ideal sage. Throughout our lives, we are often influenced by the people immediately around us, their fears, their complaints, their shortcuts. When faced with a difficult decision, our first instinct might be to think, "What would my friends do?" Or, "How can I get out of this with the least amount of trouble?" This technique proposes a far more empowering question. What would a perfectly wise and courageous person do in this exact situation? Now, it's crucial to understand that this is not about chasing some unattainable, flawless perfection that will only make you feel inadequate. The ideal sage is not a real person you're failing to live up to. Instead, think of this figure as a conceptual North Star, a guiding archetype of virtue that you create within your own mind. The power of this exercise lies in its ability to cut through the fog of our immediate emotions and biases. When you're feeling slighted, angry, or afraid, your judgment is clouded, your perspective shrinks, and you're tempted to make choices based on short-term relief or ego protection. In those heated moments, pausing to ask what the ideal sage would do instantly elevates your thinking. It forces you to adopt a broader, more principled viewpoint. You are no longer just you, reacting from a place of wounded pride. You are stepping into the shoes of an imaginary mentor who embodies the very qualities you are trying to cultivate: wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. This shift creates a small but critical gap between the impulse and the action, allowing your better nature to take the lead. Let's bring this to life with a practical scenario. Imagine you discover that a coworker, someone you considered a friend, has taken credit for a key idea you shared with them privately. The initial rush of emotions is powerful: betrayal, anger, a desire for immediate confrontation or revenge. The untrained response might be to storm into their office and angrily accuse them, or to start gossiping about them to other colleagues to damage their reputation. Both of these reactions feel satisfying in the moment but are likely to create more conflict and paint you in a negative light. Now, apply the contemplation of the ideal sage. You take a breath and ask yourself, what would a person of profound wisdom and unshakable courage do here? The answer that arises isn't about being a passive doormat. The sage would not ignore the injustice, but their response would be measured, effective, and rooted in strength, not reactive emotion. They would recognize that the co-worker's action reveals a character flaw in them, not a deficiency in you. The courageous part would be to address the issue directly, but with calm authority. You might schedule a private meeting and say, "I noticed that the proposal you presented contained the concept I mentioned to you last week. I'd like to understand how you see my contribution fitting into the project moving forward." This approach is firm without being aggressive. It states the facts clearly, asserts your ownership, and opens a dialogue rather than shutting it down with blame. It demonstrates that your sense of worth isn't so fragile that it can be broken by someone else's dishonesty. You are secure enough to handle the situation with integrity and poise. This practice is incredibly versatile. You can use it for small, everyday challenges as well. When you're feeling lazy and want to skip your workout, asking what the ideal sage would do reminds you that discipline is a form of self-respect. When you're tempted to spread a juicy piece of gossip, the sage guides you toward silence and integrity. The key is to personalize this ideal figure. You might draw inspiration from historical figures you admire, like Marcus Aurelius for his calm leadership or Seneca for his reasoned approach to adversity, or even from a fictional character who embodies steadfast principles. Over time, this internal guide becomes a constant companion, a voice of reason and strength that helps you consistently choose the path that builds rather than erodes your unbreakable frame. It transforms moral and ethical decisions from abstract dilemmas into clear, actionable steps, always pointing you toward the person you are capable of becoming. Now, after building an internal guide for our actions, we turn to a technique that provides the ultimate context for every single one of those actions, a principle known as Memento Mori. Translated from Latin, it means remember you must die. On its surface, this might sound like the most morbid or pessimistic concept we've encountered yet. It's a thought we often actively avoid, something our culture tends to sweep under the rug. But the Stoics and countless other wisdom traditions saw this remembrance not as a source of dread, but as the most powerful tool imaginable for creating a life of vibrant purpose, clarity, and intensity. They didn't keep the fact of mortality in the background as a silent fear. They brought it to the forefront of their minds as a daily advisor. The core idea is this: acknowledging the inevitability of our own death is not about cultivating fear, it is about cultivating focus. Imagine for a moment that you received a definitive, unchangeable diagnosis, not of illness but of time. You learn with absolute certainty that you have exactly 1 year left to live. How would your priorities shift instantly? The petty grievances you've been holding onto, the argument with a neighbor over a property line, the resentment toward a colleague for a past mistake, would they still command your attention? Or would they suddenly seem like the most colossal waste of your precious, limited energy? The meetings you dread, the hobbies you've postponed, the difficult but important conversations you've been avoiding, would you continue to put them off? This mental exercise is the essence of Memento Mori. It forces a ruthless prioritization of what is truly essential, cutting through the noise of societal expectations and trivial concerns like a hot knife through butter. This practice directly strengthens your frame by instilling a profound sense of urgency, not a frantic, panicked urgency, but a calm and determined one. When you operate with the awareness that your time is finite, you stop postponing your life. You stop saying, "I'll pursue that passion project when I have more time," or "I'll mend that relationship when things settle down." You understand that someday is a dangerous illusion. The clock is always ticking, and this awareness compels you to act now. It gives you the courage to leave the job that drains your soul, to start the business you've been dreaming about, to tell the people you love that you love them today, without waiting for a perfect moment that may never arrive. Procrastination, perhaps the greatest enemy of a meaningful life, loses its grip when you remember that death could interrupt your plans at any moment. Furthermore, Memento Mori is the ultimate antidote to vanity and the endless pursuit of external validation. So much of our energy is spent crafting a certain image, accumulating possessions, and seeking the approval of people whose opinions will not matter to us on our last day. When you regularly contemplate your mortality, the allure of status symbols and superficial praise begins to fade. What will it matter then how many followers you had or what kind of car you drove? This reflection shifts your focus inward to the quality of your character and the depth of your experiences. It asks the only question that will ultimately matter: did I live with virtue? Was I courageous? Was I kind? Was I true to myself? This focus builds a frame that is rooted in intrinsic value, not in the fickle opinions of others, making you immune to the slings and arrows of gossip and social comparison. The most immediate and beautiful effect of this practice, however, is the way it transforms your appreciation for the ordinary. The Stoic philosopher Seneca put it perfectly when he wrote, "He who has learned to die has unlearned how to be a slave." When you accept the reality of death, you are freed from the slavery of taking life for granted. The morning coffee, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the sound of a loved one's laughter, these are not mundane events. They are fleeting, irreplaceable miracles. Memento Mori doesn't cast a shadow over life. It turns up the contrast, making every moment shine with a sharper, more precious light. A setback at work becomes a minor event in a grand, finite adventure. A quiet evening at home becomes a sacred experience. By remembering that everything ends, you learn to truly begin, to squeeze every drop of meaning and joy from the present moment, building a frame that is not only unbreakable but also deeply, passionately alive. Having cultivated a profound understanding of our own finite nature, we now turn our gaze outward to our relationship with the 7 billion other souls sharing this planet with us. The next technique invites us into a perspective so expansive it can fundamentally rewire how we experience conflict and connection. This is the Stoic principle of sympatheia, a beautiful and complex idea that translates to a deep sense of interconnectedness. The Stoics viewed the entire cosmos not as a random collection of separate objects, but as a single, living, rational organism, a unified whole. And just as the individual cells in your body all contribute to your overall health and function, every human being is an integral part of this greater universal community. When you truly internalize this concept, it transforms your interactions from isolated skirmishes into interactions within a shared body. The immediate and most powerful benefit of embracing sympatheia is the drastic reduction in feelings of loneliness, alienation, and personal anger. So much of our frustration with others stems from seeing them as separate agents acting against us, as outsiders disrupting our private world. But if we are all part of the same whole, then the person who cuts you off in traffic or the colleague who undermines you in a meeting is not an external enemy invading your space. They are a part of your community, however flawed or misguided their actions may be in that moment. This shift doesn't mean you become a passive pushover. It means your starting point for engagement changes from defensiveness to a more nuanced understanding. Your frame is no longer a small, isolated fort under constant siege, but becomes a stable node within a vast, interconnected network. This leads directly to the core practical application of sympatheia, learning to see poor behavior not as malicious evil, but as a form of ignorance. The Stoics firmly believed that no one consciously chooses what they believe to be evil. People always act in ways they think are right or beneficial based on their current, often limited, understanding of the world. When someone lies, cheats, or acts cruelly, they are operating under a fundamental error in judgment. They mistakenly believe that their action will lead to some good for themselves, failing to see that vice is its own punishment and that harming the community ultimately harms themselves. Viewing them as ignorant rather than evil is a game changer for your emotional equilibrium. It's the difference between reacting to a shouted insult with rage and reacting to a crying infant's wail with patience. You don't get angry at the baby for being ignorant of how to communicate. You understand its distress comes from a lack of capacity. Similarly, the adult who acts poorly is often suffering from a poverty of wisdom, a lack of emotional education, or the scars of their own past pain. Let's apply this to a challenging real-world situation. You are working on a collaborative project, and one team member consistently misses deadlines, providing sloppy work that forces you to pick up the slack. The untrained reaction is to see this person as lazy, irresponsible, or intentionally disrespecting you and the team. This interpretation fuels resentment and anger. Every missed deadline feels like a personal affront. Now apply the lens of sympatheia. First, you recognize your shared goal, the success of the project, which is a benefit to the whole team, the larger interconnected community. This person is not an outsider but a fellow participant, however dysfunctional their contribution may be. Then you reframe their behavior not as malice but as a failure of understanding or capacity. Perhaps they are struggling with a hidden personal issue, like a family crisis or a bout of depression, that is sapping their focus. Maybe they lack the specific skills or organizational tools to manage their workload effectively and are too embarrassed to ask for help. They are ignorant of how to meet the standard, not defiantly opposed to it. This perspective doesn't mean you excuse the behavior or abandon your standards. A frame built on sympatheia is compassionate yet firm. your response is no longer driven by personal irritation, but by a desire to restore health to the interconnected system, your team. Instead of sending a terse email blaming them, you might request a private conversation and say, "I've noticed the deadlines have been a struggle to meet, and it's creating some pressure on the rest of the team. I'm concerned. Is everything okay? Is there a part of the process that's unclear or some support you need to be successful?" This approach comes from a place of wanting to educate and uplift a fellow part of the whole rather than punish an offender. It escalates conflict and opens the door to a constructive solution. Even if the person reacts defensively, your inner calm remains intact because your frame is rooted in the unwavering understanding of interconnectedness. You have not taken their failure personally because you see it as a symptom of their own disconnect from the rational, cooperative good. By practicing sympathy, you build a resilience that is both strong and deeply humane, allowing you to navigate the complexities of human relationships with a steady patience and a calm, unwavering strength. This brings us to a technique that acts as the active, dynamic engine for the principles we've been building, a practice we can call turning obstacles into fuel. You've learned to accept what you cannot control with the dichotomy, and you've learned to love your fate with Amor Fati. Now we take the next, more aggressive step. We learn to actively dismantle the very idea of an obstacle and reassemble it as an opportunity. This is the Stoic art of perception shifting in its most potent form. It's not about passive acceptance, it's about an alchemical process that transforms the lead of a setback into the gold of personal growth. The entire mechanism hinges on a single, powerful question that you must train yourself to ask the moment adversity strikes. Instead of the default questions, "Why does this always happen to me?" or "How can I get out of this?" you pose a completely different inquiry. How can this situation actually benefit me? This question forces your brain to switch from a passive, victim mode operating system to an active, creative, and resourceful one. It compels you to search for the hidden advantage, the silver lining, the lesson embedded within the difficulty. The obstacle is no longer a roadblock on your path. It becomes the path itself, a new and unexpected route toward strength. Let's make this incredibly tangible with the modern example of a project cancellation. Imagine you've spent the last 6 months pouring your heart and soul into a new initiative at work. You've worked late nights, you've championed the idea in meetings, and you've built genuine excitement around it. Then, without much warning, a shift in company strategy leads to the project being abruptly cancelled. The initial, untrained reaction is a profound sense of failure, disappointment, and even bitterness. It's easy to see this as a waste of time, a blow to your reputation, and a clear sign that your hard work was for nothing. This interpretation is emotionally draining and leaves you feeling powerless. Now apply the technique of turning the obstacle into fuel. You consciously reframe the event. The project cancellation is not a failure, it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to practice the virtue of adaptability. Life is change, and here is a perfect, real-world drill to prove your ability to pivot gracefully under pressure. It's an opportunity to learn. You can conduct a fearless post-mortem. What did I learn about project management, about navigating corporate politics? About presenting ideas more effectively? This 6-month period was not wasted. It was an intensive, paid education that has made you wiser and more experienced. Most importantly, it's an opportunity to start something new, unburdened by the old project. That creative energy you invested now gets freed up and redirected. Perhaps this cancellation is the universe's way of pushing you toward an even better idea that you wouldn't have had the bandwidth to pursue otherwise. This reframing applies to personal setbacks with equal force. Consider a painful breakup. The standard narrative is one of loss and heartache, but when you ask, "How can this benefit me?" the answers are transformative. The end of this relationship is an opportunity to rediscover your own independence and strength. It's a chance to learn profound lessons about what you truly need and value in a partner, lessons that will guide you to a healthier connection in the future. It frees up emotional space for new friendships, hobbies, and personal growth that you may have neglected. The obstacle of a broken heart becomes the fuel for building a more complete and resilient version of yourself. The ultimate result of consistently practicing this mental shift is the development of a frame that is fundamentally proactive and resourceful. You stop seeing yourself as a leaf blown about by the winds of fortune and start seeing yourself as a sailor who can adjust the sails to use any wind, even a contrary one, to make progress. You become incredibly difficult to discourage because you are always playing a different game. While others are focused on the problem, you are already searching for the hidden advantage. This mindset makes you invaluable in a team setting and unshakable in your personal life. You build a reputation as someone who cannot be kept down because you have trained your mind to find the leverage point in every setback, turning every apparent defeat into a stepping stone for your next victory. Building directly on the idea of interconnectedness, we now turn inward to secure the very core of your being. This brings us to one of the most vivid and powerful metaphors in all of Stoicism, a concept that Marcus Aurelius relied on constantly, the idea of the inner citadel. Picture a mighty fortress built on an impregnable mountain peak with towering walls that have weathered centuries of storms and sieges. Inside this fortress resides the true you, your character, your values, your capacity for reason. Now imagine that outside these walls lies the entire external world, the chaos of events, the opinions of others, the noise of the media, the inevitable setbacks and successes of life. The fundamental Stoic insight is this: those external events, no matter how loud or threatening they seem, have absolutely no power to enter your citadel. The gates are locked from the inside. They can only enter if you, the guardian of the gate, personally decide to open them and let them in. What exactly constitutes this citadel? It is the domain we identified with the very first technique, the dichotomy of control. Your inner citadel is your faculty of judgment, your ability to assign value to things, your intentions, and your voluntary actions. An insult is just sound waves until your judgment labels it as a personal attack and ushers it inside where it can ransack your peace. A financial loss is just a change in numbers on a screen until your assessment decides it represents a catastrophe, granting it permission to storm your inner halls. The goal of Stoic practice is to become an ever-vigilant, unwavering gatekeeper for this sacred space. Your duty is to stand guard at the entrance to your own mind, carefully inspecting every potential visitor before allowing it to cross the threshold. So, how do we practically reinforce the walls of this citadel in our modern world? The first and most crucial step is to become acutely aware of what you are allowing to approach your gates on a daily basis. This is about creating intelligent mental boundaries. In the ancient world, the threats might have been literal armies or malicious individuals at the forum. Today, the sieges are more subtle but constant. They come in the form of the 24-hour news cycle designed to provoke outrage and anxiety, the social media feeds that trigger envy and insecurity, and the conversations with people who thrive on drama and negativity. The untrained mind leaves the gates wide open, allowing this relentless barrage to stream in unchallenged, cluttering the inner halls with fear, anger, and distraction. A powerful and immediate action you can take is to conduct an audit of your informational diet. Just as you would be mindful of the food you put into your body, you must be ruthlessly selective about the content you feed your mind. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, does scrolling through my social media feed in the morning leave me feeling inspired and centered, or does it fill me with a sense of lack and comparison? Does watching certain news channels leave me informed and ready to act constructively, or does it leave me with a simmering sense of helplessness and anger? Guarding your citadel means having the courage to mute, unfollow, or turn off the sources that consistently disturb your inner peace. This isn't about burying your head in the sand and ignoring the world's problems. It is about choosing when and how you engage with them from a position of strength, rather than being a passive victim of an information assault. You might decide to consume news only once a day from a single, reputable source for a limited time, rather than having alerts constantly breach your walls. The same principle applies to your conversations. You have a limited amount of mental and emotional energy. Engaging in gossip or repeatedly listening to a friend's complaints without any intent to find a solution is like inviting a Trojan horse into your citadel. It carries the seeds of negativity and pettiness inside. Protecting your peace means learning to gracefully disengage from conversations that are purely toxic or unproductive. You can change the subject, offer a constructive perspective, or simply excuse yourself. This is not being rude, it is an act of self-respect. It is the recognition that your inner tranquility is your most valuable possession, and you will not allow it to be compromised by the thoughtless words of others or your own unguarded consumption. By fortifying these boundaries, you create the quiet, orderly space within your citadel necessary to cultivate the wisdom, courage, and clarity that define an unbreakable frame. The storms may rage outside, but inside you remain calm, centered, and utterly in command. Now we weave together two powerful threads we've already explored to create a vibrant and deeply felt daily practice. Building directly on the mental resilience of negative visualization, we arrive at Technique 14, which is the active cultivation of gratitude. You might think of gratitude as a warm, fuzzy feeling that comes and goes, often when things are going our way. But Stoic gratitude is something far more robust and intentional. It is not a passive emotion that happens to you. It is an active virtue that you choose to practice, a conscious decision to recognize the value of what you have, precisely because you understand it is temporary. The practice of premeditatio malorum, where we vividly imagine losing what we cherish, is not meant to leave us in a state of fear. Its ultimate purpose is to shock our system into a profound state of appreciation. By mentally removing the people, the health, and the opportunities we often take for granted, we are forced to see them not as permanent entitlements, but as incredible, fleeting gifts. This transforms gratitude from a vague notion into a piercingly clear reality. The difference is like that between casually acknowledging that the sun is warm and truly feeling its life-giving rays on your skin after a long, cold night. Stoic gratitude is that moment of intense feeling. It's the recognition that your ability to see, to walk, to think, to connect with loved ones, none of these are guaranteed. They are on loan to you, and the practice of gratitude is the act of honoring that loan with your full attention. This isn't about ignoring life's difficulties. It's about ensuring that difficulties don't blind you to the immense good that still exists, often in the most ordinary parts of your day. To move this from a philosophical idea to a lived experience, we need to embody it through specific, repeatable actions. One profoundly simple yet powerful method is to integrate a moment of mental thanks into your daily routine. This takes less than a minute but can reshape your entire perspective. For instance, while you're brushing your teeth in the morning or waiting for your coffee to brew, pick one person in your life, a partner, a child, a friend, a supportive colleague, and mentally thank them for something specific. Don't just think, "I'm grateful for my partner." Instead, articulate it clearly in your mind. "I am grateful for the way my partner made me laugh yesterday when I was feeling stressed." Or, "I am grateful for my child's curiosity, which reminds me to see the world with wonder." This act of specific, directed gratitude actively strengthens your emotional connection to that person and reinforces the positive aspects of your life, building your frame on a foundation of abundance rather than lack. Another highly effective practice is the classic gratitude journal, but with a crucial Stoic twist. Instead of just writing down 3 things you're grateful for, frame them with the awareness of their temporary nature. The items on your list shouldn't be broad abstractions like "my health" or "my job." Get specific and connect them to the possibility of loss. For example, you might write, "Today, I am grateful for the ability to go for a run because I know there may come a day when my body cannot." Or, "I am grateful for the quiet hour I had to read this evening, recognizing that this piece is a rare and precious commodity that could easily be disrupted." Or even, "I am grateful for the warm meal I ate, understanding that this basic comfort is a privilege not available to everyone." This practice does two things simultaneously. It allows you to savor the good in your life while also quietly reinforcing your resilience by acknowledging its fragility. It's a daily workout for your appreciation muscles, ensuring that you don't need a catastrophic loss to jolt you into recognizing the value of what you already possess. By making this active gratitude a non-negotiable part of your day, you inoculate yourself against the entitlement and dissatisfaction that can so easily creep in, ensuring that your unbreakable frame is not just strong, but also deeply thankful and joyful. Now we enter the very heart of Stoic psychology, the command center where our unbreakable frame is either forged or fractured with every passing second. This is the discipline of assent, and it is arguably the most advanced and powerful technique for mastering your inner world. You've already learned the Stoic pause, that crucial breath that creates space. The discipline of assent is what you do with that space. Think of your mind as a courtroom. An impression, a thought, a feeling, a perception arrives like a witness giving testimony. This witness is often dramatic, biased, and prone to exaggeration. The initial impression might shout, "That person deliberately insulted you," or "This setback is a complete disaster." The untrained mind acts like a rubber stamp judge, immediately banging the gavel and accepting this testimony as absolute truth. This quick assent is what gives rise to our automatic and often regrettable emotional reactions. The discipline of assent trains you to be a skeptical, thorough judge instead of a passive rubber stamp. When an impression enters your mental courtroom, you do not immediately assent to it. You pause the proceedings, you call the impression to the stand, and you cross-examine it. You ask two fundamental questions. First, is this impression objectively true? And second, even if it contains a grain of truth, is it helpful for me to grant it my full belief? This process is the master key to emotional regulation because it intercepts destructive thoughts at the point of entry before they can take root in your nervous system and trigger a full-blown reaction. Let's illustrate this with a scenario that's likely familiar. You send a detailed, thoughtful message to a friend or colleague, and you receive a reply that is strikingly brief, perhaps just a K or a thumbs-up emoji. The initial impression that storms into your mind is immediate and visceral. They're being dismissive, they didn't appreciate my effort, they're angry with me. This impression carries a strong emotional charge. It feels like rejection. If you assent to it without question, that charge is released. You might feel a sinking feeling of hurt, which could then morph into defensiveness or anger. You might draft a passive-aggressive follow-up message, creating unnecessary conflict. Now, apply the discipline of assent. The moment you feel that flicker of hurt, you activate your inner judge. You pause and cross-examine the impression. Is it objectively true that this brief reply signifies dismissal or anger? The answer is we cannot know. It is merely one interpretation among many other equally plausible ones. Perhaps they are incredibly busy and just responding quickly to acknowledge receipt. Maybe they are walking somewhere and typing with one hand. It's possible they intend to give a fuller reply later when they have more time. Your initial impression is not a fact, it is a hypothesis, and a rather uncharitable one at that. Then you ask the second question. Even if there is a slight chance they are being short with me, is it helpful for me to assent to the idea that I have been wronged? Absolutely not. Assenting to that thought only poisons your own mood and potentially damages the relationship. It serves no constructive purpose. Having thoroughly examined the evidence, your rational mind, acting as judge, can now deliver a verdict. You can consciously choose to withhold assent from the initial, harmful interpretation. You can replace it with a more neutral, helpful one. They received my message. The content of their reply is neutral. I will proceed as if all is well unless presented with clear evidence to the contrary. By refusing to assent to the negative impression, you disarm it. The emotional charge dissipates. You remain calm and undisturbed. You have successfully defended your inner citadel from an invasion that was based on flimsy, unverified intelligence. This discipline is particularly potent when dealing with predictions about the future, which are a primary source of anxiety. The impression might scream, "You're going to fail that presentation tomorrow." The untrained mind assents, and the body is flooded with stress hormones. The disciplined judge asks, "Is this impression true?" It is a prediction about an event that has not yet occurred. It is not a fact. Is it helpful to believe it? No, it only generates paralyzing fear. You then replace it with a helpful assent. I am prepared as I can be. I will focus on delivering the material clearly. The outcome is not entirely within my control. This practice builds a frame of remarkable stability because your emotional state is no longer hostage to every random, unexamined thought that passes through your mind. You learn that you are not your thoughts. You are the gatekeeper who decides which thoughts are worthy of your belief and which are merely mental noise to be observed and let go. This is the essence of true self-mastery. Having established that command over which thoughts we accept as true, we now arrive at a technique that grounds all of this mental discipline in the only reality we can ever truly act within, the present moment. The Stoics understood with crystal clarity that our minds are time-traveling machines, and this incredible ability is a double-edged sword. We can project ourselves into a future filled with potential pitfalls, weaving elaborate tapestries of everything that might go wrong. Or we can drift back into the past, replaying scenes of regret and missed opportunities. The problem is, while we are mentally vacationing in these other times, we are completely absent from the only place where our power actually exists, the here and now. Anxiety is a tax we pay on a future we may never own. Regret is a debt we carry from a past we can no longer change, but the present moment is tax-free and debt-free. It is the only place where action is possible. This focus is not about avoiding planning or ignoring the lessons of history. A Stoic plans for the future wisely, but they do not worry about it. They learn from the past, but they do not dwell in it. The crucial distinction lies in where you anchor your conscious attention. Worrying is like sitting in the driver's seat of a parked car, gripping the steering wheel tightly and agonizing over every possible wrong turn you might take on a journey that hasn't even begun. Planning, by contrast, is calmly consulting the map, noting potential routes and weather conditions, and then starting the engine to drive, focusing only on the next 100 feet of road directly in front of you. The Stoic is always driving, their attention fixed on the present stretch of the journey, trusting their preparation but fully engaged with the immediate task. The good news is that residing in the present is a skill, and like any skill, it can be strengthened with specific, repeatable exercises. One of the most direct ways to train this muscle is through a simple breathing anchor. For just 1 minute, several times a day, you can drop everything and bring your full attention to the physical sensation of your breath. You don't need to change your breathing or force it into a special pattern. Simply notice the cool air entering your nostrils, the slight expansion of your chest or belly, the warm air leaving your body. Your mind will inevitably wander. It will try to pull you back into a conversation you had earlier or a meeting you have later. The entire practice is the act of gently, without any self-judgment, noticing that your attention has drifted and escorting it back to the anchor of your breath. This 1-minute drill is like a micro-workout for your focus. It teaches your mind that it is possible to disengage from the whirlwind of thoughts about other times and place your awareness squarely in the immediate, tangible reality of your body. Another powerful method is to choose one routine activity each day and perform it with your complete and undivided attention. This is often called mindfulness, but from a Stoic perspective, it's about reclaiming your agency. For example, when you are washing the dishes, wash only the dishes. Feel the temperature of the water on your skin. Notice the texture of the sponge. Observe the way the soap bubbles form and pop. When your mind starts to complain about the chore or drift to your to-do list, gently guide it back to the sensory experience of the task itself. The same can be done with walking. Instead of using a walk as a time to listen to a podcast and plan your week, try walking just to walk. Feel the connection of your feet with the ground. Notice the rhythm of your stride. Observe the colors and sounds around you without layering a story onto them. This practice transforms mundane activities from burdens into opportunities for centering yourself. It proves that you can choose to be fully present, and in that presence you find a deep sense of calm and control. Consider how this applies to a high-pressure situation like giving a public speech. Anxiety lives in the future. What if I forget my lines? What if the audience doesn't like me? These thoughts pull you out of the present and into a phantom reality, draining your energy and confidence. The Stoic speaker, trained in present-moment focus, grounds themselves not in the potential future, but in the current reality. As they walk onto the stage, they feel their feet firmly on the floor. They take a conscious breath and feel the air fill their lungs. They look at the first face in the audience and see a person, not a critic. They begin speaking, focusing only on delivering the very next sentence with clarity and intention. By anchoring themselves in the present, they access a reservoir of calm and power that is completely invisible to the anxious mind. They understand that the entire speech is just a series of present moments strung together. By mastering this one moment and then the next, they master the entire endeavor. This is the ultimate power of the present. It is the only point of contact we have with reality, and therefore, the only place where our character can truly be expressed and our will can be effectively applied. Now, we arrive at a technique that cuts directly to the heart of our modern vulnerabilities, a practice the Stoics called voluntary simplicity. In a world that constantly shouts at us to acquire more, to upgrade, to keep up with an endless cycle of newness, this idea is a quiet but powerful rebellion. It's the conscious decision to reduce your desires for luxury, status, and material possessions, not out of a sense of lack or poverty, but as a strategic move to build an unassailable form of freedom. The logic is beautifully straightforward. Your happiness and sense of self-worth become inversely proportional to the number of external things they depend on. The more you need to feel happy, the more fragile you become. But when you deliberately choose to need very little, you make yourself incredibly difficult to harm. Fortune's whims, a market crash, a lost job, a broken possession simply lose their power to devastate you. This practice is about systematically dismantling the hidden chains that material comforts can become. Every luxury we come to see as a necessity is another link in that chain. The fancy car isn't just a car, it becomes a source of anxiety about dings and scratches and monthly payments. The designer wardrobe isn't just clothing, it becomes a tool for seeking validation and a source of stress about staying in fashion. The sprawling house isn't just a home, it becomes a trap of maintenance, cleaning, and debt. Voluntary simplicity is the process of inspecting these chains and deciding which ones you are willing to carry and which ones you can joyfully set down. It's about asking a radical question. Instead of working harder to afford more things, what if I desired less? This shift doesn't mean adopting a life of extreme austerity or denying yourself pleasure. It means redefining pleasure itself, finding it in the richness of experience, connection, and inner peace rather than in the accumulation of objects. The most immediate way to experience the liberating power of this philosophy is to engage in a small, practical decluttering project. This isn't just about tidying up, it's a tangible lesson in non-attachment. Choose a single area, a closet, a bookshelf, a kitchen drawer. As you sort through each item, hold it and ask yourself two Stoic questions. Does this thing serve a practical purpose that aligns with my core values? And more importantly, does owning it contribute to my peace of mind, or does it create a subtle burden of maintenance and distraction? You'll be surprised how many possessions fall into the second category. Letting them go is not an act of loss, but an act of reclaiming space, both physical space in your home and mental space in your mind. Each item you donate or discard is a small declaration of independence from the belief that you are what you own. The feeling of lightness and clarity that follows is a direct taste of the freedom that comes with a simpler life. For a more profound experiential shift, consider challenging yourself to a no-spend weekend. This doesn't mean a weekend of deprivation, but one of rediscovery. For 2 days, you commit to spending money only on absolute essentials, if anything at all. This simple constraint forces a creative and often beautiful shift in perspective. Instead of going to a restaurant, you cook a meal with ingredients you already have, discovering the quiet satisfaction of resourcefulness. Instead of going to the movies, you visit a park you've driven past 100 times, or you pull out a board game, or you simply spend an afternoon in deep conversation with someone you love. What you quickly realize is that the most nourishing activities are often free or very low cost. The weekend becomes not about what you're missing, but about what you've been overlooking. It reveals how much of our spending is driven by habit, boredom, or a restless desire for external stimulation, rather than by genuine need or deep fulfillment. By voluntarily stepping off the treadmill of consumption, even for a short time, you prove to yourself that your well-being is not for sale. You strengthen your frame by demonstrating in a very concrete way that you are the source of your own contentment, and that true wealth is measured not by what you have, but by how little you need to be happy. This brings us to a subtle but profoundly empowering distinction, what we can call the art of acquiescence. It is crucial to understand from the very beginning that Stoic acquiescence bears no resemblance to passive resignation, to simply giving up and saying, well, nothing can be done. That kind of surrender comes from a place of weakness and hopelessness. True Stoic acquiescence, by contrast, is an act of strength and lucid intelligence. It is the clear-eyed, deliberate decision to stop fighting against the unchangeable facts of a situation, so that you can redirect all of your energy and focus toward what you can actually influence. It is the difference between wasting your strength trying to push down a brick wall and wisely using that same strength to find the door or scale a ladder. A beautiful parallel to this idea exists in the well-known Serenity Prayer, which asks for the serenity to accept the things one cannot change, the courage to change the things one can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This is the very essence of Stoic acquiescence. The wisdom to know the difference is the key that unlocks the practice. It requires you to constantly apply the dichotomy of control, to sort the elements of any challenge into their proper categories. Once you have discerned what is truly beyond your power, acquiescence is the graceful and immediate release of any mental or emotional struggle against that reality. It is not approval, it is acceptance. You don't have to like the fact that it's raining to stop cursing the sky and simply open your umbrella. To make this concept vivid, consider the metaphor of a river. Imagine you're standing in a fast-moving current and you need to get to the other side. The river's flow is a fact. It is powerful, constant, and entirely outside of your control. The person who fails to acquiesce stands rigidly in place, facing upstream, and expends all their energy trying to hold back the water with their bare hands. They strain and push against the current, becoming exhausted, frustrated, and ultimately swept away. This is what we do when we rage against a past mistake that cannot be undone, or when we demand that another person change their fundamental nature to suit our preferences. We are trying to stop the river. The Stoic, having practiced the art of acquiescence, behaves entirely differently. they acknowledge the river's flow with a nod. They accept its power as a simple fact of their environment. They do not waste a single ounce of strength fighting it. Instead, they turn their attention to what they can control, their own body and their skills. They channel all of their energy into reading the current, adjusting their stance, and swimming skillfully across to their goal. The river's power hasn't changed, but by acquiescing to its nature, they are able to use that very power to assist their journey. The obstacle, once accepted, becomes a part of the path. Let's apply this to a deeply personal and painful example: receiving a difficult medical diagnosis for yourself or a loved one. The diagnosis itself, the reality of the condition, is the river. It is a formidable, unchangeable fact. The untrained response is often a storm of denial and anger, fighting the river. This can't be happening, it's not fair, why me? This internal struggle is exhausting and does nothing to alter the medical reality. It only depletes the emotional reserves you desperately need for the challenges ahead. Stoic acquiescence is the courageous and difficult step of saying, "This is the situation. I do not like it, I did not choose it, but I accept that it is true." This acceptance is not defeat. It is the necessary precondition for effective action. It is the moment you stop fighting the diagnosis and start focusing all your power on what you can control, adhering to the treatment plan, researching options, providing support, and cherishing each present moment. By acquiescing to the unchangeable fact, you free up immense resources to navigate the changeable aspects with grace, love, and resilience. This art ensures that your energy is never wasted on futile battles, but is always reserved for the meaningful struggles where your efforts can truly make a difference. Now we arrive at one of the most liberating distinctions in the entire Stoic toolkit, a principle that cuts the final cord tethering your happiness to the outside world. This is the discipline of prioritizing character over reputation. In our hyper-connected society, we are bombarded with incentives to manage our reputation, our social media image, our professional brand, our standing in the community. We spend an enormous amount of mental energy crafting how we are perceived, worrying about what others are saying about us, and seeking the approval of people whose opinions we may not even respect. The Stoics identified this as a profound trap. Reputation, they argued, is not something you can truly control. It exists in the minds of others, subject to their biases, moods, and limited information. To make your sense of self-worth dependent on it is to hand over the keys to your inner citadel to a fickle and often irrational mob. The Stoic alternative is both simple and radical. Shift your entire focus from how you are perceived to who you are in the deepest, most private sense. Your reputation is external, falling squarely into the category of things not within your power. Your character, however, your integrity, your courage, your sense of justice, your commitment to doing the right thing even when no one is watching, this is the very essence of what you can control. It is the internal territory of your virtues. The goal is to become utterly indifferent to the applause and the heckling of the external crowd, and to instead listen only to the quiet, unwavering verdict of your own moral compass. When you do this, you achieve a level of freedom that is almost unimaginable to the person who is constantly performing for an audience. You are no longer a marionette whose strings are pulled by praise or criticism. Your actions become authentic, guided by principle rather than by the desire for a reward or the fear of a penalty. To grasp the sheer power of this, let's consider a practical scenario from the modern workplace. Imagine you are part of a team working on a project. You discover a significant error that was made early in the process, one that could cause delays. You also know that if you bring this error to light, it might reflect poorly on a popular manager or create short-term friction, even though addressing it is the right thing for the long-term success of the project. The person who prioritizes reputation might be tempted to stay silent to avoid the potential social fallout. They are making decisions based on an external metric, how they will be perceived by their colleagues and superiors. The person who prioritizes character, however, operates from a completely different set of coordinates. They ask only one question: what is the right and honest thing to do? The answer is clear: the error must be disclosed so it can be fixed. They proceed to do so, not with drama but with calm professionalism. They accept that some people might be temporarily annoyed or that their likability might take a hit. But their inner scorecard remains untarnished because they acted with integrity. They have strengthened their frame by proving to themselves that their commitment to truth is stronger than their desire for popularity. This practice builds a self-validated confidence that is impossible to manipulate. Think about how easily someone can be controlled if they crave praise. A manipulative person can flatter them into compliance. Conversely, if someone is terrified of criticism, they can be threatened into submission. But the individual who is focused solely on their own character is immune to these tactics. Your boss can praise you lavishly for a job well done, and you can receive it graciously without letting it inflate your ego, because your worth is not contingent on that praise. The same boss can criticize you unfairly the next day, and you can consider the feedback objectively without being crushed, because your sense of self is rooted in your own knowledge of your efforts and intentions. You become like a deep-rooted tree in a storm. The wind, the opinions of others can rage and howl, but it cannot uproot you because your stability comes from within. This is the foundation of an unbreakable frame, one that is built on the solid ground of virtue rather than the shifting sands of public opinion. Now, after fortifying ourselves from within, we come to a technique that beautifully redirects our strength outward, proving that an unbreakable frame is not a fortress of isolation but a source of warmth and connection for others. This is the practice of kindness and justice, and it is a profound expression of your inner power. It might seem counterintuitive. After all, if we are focused on building personal resilience, why should we expend energy on others, especially when it's difficult? The Stoic answer is clear: because your virtue is not complete until it is expressed in the world through your actions. Acting with fairness and compassion, particularly when it requires courage, is not a diversion from your own strength. It is the ultimate test and reinforcement of it. A frame that can only withstand pressure but cannot extend grace is brittle in its own way. True strength is flexible enough to bend with understanding and generous enough to offer support. This practice is rooted in the Stoic belief that human beings are fundamentally social creatures designed for cooperation. To act against justice or to withhold kindness when it is within your power to give it is to live contrary to your own nature, which creates a deep inner conflict that weakens your character. When you choose to be fair in a situation where you could easily exploit an advantage, or when you offer kindness to someone who has been difficult, you are not being weak. You are demonstrating that your actions are governed by your principles, not by your fleeting emotions or by what you can gain. This consistency between your inner values and your outward behavior is the bedrock of a truly integrated and unbreakable character. It builds a frame that is not only resilient but also earns genuine respect and influence, because people trust that you will act with integrity even when it's challenging. Let's bring this to life with a scenario that tests this principle. Imagine you are a manager and you have to decide on a promotion between two employees. Employee A is a close friend, someone you socialize with who has performed adequately. Employee B is quieter, keeps to themselves, but their performance metrics are objectively and consistently superior. The easy, self-serving path would be to promote your friend. It would avoid an awkward conversation and maintain a comfortable social dynamic, but the path of justice, guided by your Stoic frame, demands a different choice. You must set aside personal affinity and award the promotion based on merit alone. This action, while difficult, is a powerful declaration of your character. It proves to yourself more than anyone else that your decisions are not for sale to personal convenience. It reinforces your own self-respect and builds a reputation for fairness that will inspire loyalty and hard work from your entire team, who will see that excellence is truly rewarded. The practice of kindness operates in a similar way, especially when it is least expected. Consider encountering someone who is being openly rude or hostile towards you. The untrained, ego-driven reaction is to respond in kind, to match their energy with defensiveness or aggression. This feels powerful in the moment, but it is actually a reactive weakness. You have allowed their poor behavior to dictate your own. The Stoic approach, however, is to meet hostility with unexpected kindness. This doesn't mean being a doormat or ignoring bad behavior. It means responding from a place of unshakable strength. You might say calmly, "You seem very upset. Is everything okay?" This simple act of empathy completely reframes the interaction. It demonstrates that their attempt to provoke you has failed because you are so secure in yourself that you can afford to respond with concern rather than anger. This kind of response often deflates aggression more effectively than any counterattack, and it leaves you feeling empowered, not diminished, because you acted in alignment with your virtue rather than your irritation. Ultimately, weaving kindness and justice into the fabric of your daily life ensures that your unbreakable frame serves a purpose greater than just your own survival. It becomes a positive force in your community, holding the door for a stranger, offering genuine praise to a colleague, listening patiently to someone who is struggling. These are not grand gestures, but they are repeated affirmations of your commitment to a good character. Each act is like a brick added to your inner citadel, strengthening it through consistent practice. This approach transforms resilience from a solitary achievement into a relational one. You build a frame that is not just tough but also benevolent, a character that can withstand life's storms not in spite of its compassion but because of it. You learn that true power is not the ability to dominate others, but the capacity to act rightly and kindly regardless of the circumstance, solidifying a legacy of strength that is both personal and profoundly impactful. Now, having built a character that is both strong for ourselves and kind toward others, we turn to a remarkably elegant technique for navigating the space between our ambitions and the unpredictable nature of reality. This is the Stoic Reserve Clause, a mental safeguard that allows you to pursue your goals with total commitment while simultaneously holding the outcome with a light and open hand. Think of it as a built-in shock absorber for your plans. The core practice is beautifully simple. Whenever you set an intention or state a goal, you silently, or even verbally, add a short phrase that acknowledges the role of factors beyond your complete control. The ancient Stoics used phrases like fate permitting or God willing. In modern terms, you might think of it as adding, if nothing unforeseen interferes, to the end of your internal statement. The power of this clause lies in the profound psychological shift it creates. It is the ultimate application of the dichotomy of control to your goal-setting process. When you say, "I will give an outstanding presentation tomorrow," you are stating a pure intention which is entirely within your power. But when your mind hears that statement, it can easily latch onto it as an absolute prediction of the future. It starts to expect a specific outcome. The reserve clause gently corrects this by completing the thought, "I will give an outstanding presentation tomorrow, fate permitting." This small addition does two crucial things at once. First, it reinforces your commitment to the part you control, your preparation, your effort, your focus. Second, it explicitly acknowledges that the final result, how the audience receives it, whether the technology works, if an emergency disrupts the schedule, is not entirely in your hands. This prevents you from mentally claiming the successful outcome as a certainty before it has happened. Without this clause, we set ourselves up for a specific kind of suffering, the agony of frustrated expectation. Imagine you've trained for months for a marathon. You've done everything right: the long runs, the speed work, the perfect diet. You go to bed the night before the race fully expecting to achieve a personal best. But on race day, you wake up with a sudden fever or a torrential downpour floods the course. If your mind was anchored to that specific expected outcome, this unforeseen event feels like a personal catastrophe. It can lead to anger, despair, and a sense that all your hard work was wasted. The reserve clause protects you from this. The athlete who trains with the mindset of, "I will run my best possible race, fate permitting," has already made peace with the possibility of variables outside their control. If the fever or the storm arrives, it is not a shocking betrayal. It is simply fate not permitting on this particular day. The value of the months of training is not diminished because it was invested in the process, the part they controlled, not just the single desired outcome. They can recover, recalibrate, and find another race, their frame intact and their motivation undamaged. This practice is incredibly versatile, applying to everything from the most mundane daily tasks to your most cherished life ambitions. Let's say you plan to have a productive, focused workday. You might tell yourself, "Today I will finish this important report." This sets a rigid expectation. Then when your child gets sick and needs to be picked up from school, or your manager calls an unexpected all-day meeting, your entire plan is shattered and frustration mounts. Instead, employ the reserve clause. "Today, I will work with focus and diligence to advance this report as much as I can, fate permitting." This framing keeps you adaptable. When the interruption arrives, it is absorbed into the fate permitting part of the equation. You shift gears without an internal meltdown, attending to the new priority while still intending to return to your work with focus when circumstances allow. Your sense of self-worth remains tied to your diligent effort, not to the completion of a specific task list that was always vulnerable to the whims of chance. The beauty of the reserve clause is that it cultivates a form of humble confidence. It is not a statement of doubt or a recipe for half-hearted effort. Quite the opposite, it allows you to pour your entire being into your actions precisely because you have released the anxious grip on the result. You are free to do your absolute best, unburdened by the fear of failure, because you have already defined success as giving your best effort, not as achieving a particular external reward. This is the mindset of the most resilient entrepreneurs, artists, and leaders. They work with ferocious intensity toward a vision, all while understanding that market shifts, critical reception, or world events may alter the path. Their commitment is to the integrity of their work, not to a fixed destination. By making the Stoic reserve clause a subtle but consistent part of your inner dialogue, you build a frame that is both highly ambitious and profoundly peaceful, capable of striving with all its might while gracefully accepting whatever result the world returns. Expanding beautifully from the specific reminder of our own mortality, we now apply that same liberating lens of impermanence to every single facet of our existence. This is the contemplation of impermanence, a practice that invites you to see the entire world through the clarifying truth of constant flux. While Memento Mori focuses on the finiteness of the self, this technique asks you to recognize that everything you interact with, every object you own, every relationship you cherish, every status you achieve, is also in a state of graceful, inevitable dissolution. Nothing is built to last. The grandest mountains are slowly worn down by wind and rain. The most vibrant paints will eventually fade in the sun. The strongest empires rise and fall. To believe that anything in your life is a permanent fixture is to misunderstand the fundamental nature of reality. The Stoic goal is not to become depressed by this truth, but to become profoundly free because of it. The magic of this perspective lies in how it transforms your relationship with both gain and loss. When you deeply internalize that all things are temporary, you stop clutching onto them with a desperate, white-knuckled grip. Think of your possessions. That new car you worked so hard for will one day be scrap metal. The smartphone that feels like an extension of your hand will be obsolete in a few years. This isn't a reason to avoid enjoying them. It's the very reason you can enjoy them fully without the anxiety of ownership. You learn to appreciate the car for the reliable journeys it provides now, without basing your identity on it or worrying incessantly about the first scratch. You use your phone as a tool for connection and creation, understanding it's a transient instrument, not a permanent part of your soul. This mindset severs the link between your inner peace and the condition of your external world. You become a grateful tenant of your possessions rather than a fearful owner, able to appreciate their utility and beauty without the underlying terror of eventually losing them. This same principle applies with even greater force to the realm of relationships and achievements. The most beautiful friendship or romantic partnership is a temporary convergence of paths. People grow, circumstances change, and all relationships, even the lifelong ones, will end through separation or death. Understanding this from the outset does not make you love any less. It makes you love more intelligently and more intensely. It encourages you to be fully present during the time you have together, to express appreciation openly, and to avoid taking moments for granted. You savor the shared laughter and the quiet conversations, not as permanent entitlements, but as precious, fleeting gifts. When a relationship naturally evolves or even ends, the pain of loss, while real, is not catastrophic. It is framed by the understanding that this was always part of the natural order. The relationship was a beautiful chapter, not the entire book, and its conclusion doesn't invalidate the beauty that was contained within it. Consider a major professional achievement, like finally landing your dream job after years of striving. The untrained mind might see this as a final destination, a permanent state of arrival. This sets up a terrible fragility. Any threat to that position, a corporate restructuring, a change in management, is perceived as an existential crisis. But when you contemplate impermanence, you see the dream job for what it is, a wonderful opportunity that will last for a season. You pour your energy into it, you learn from it, you contribute meaningfully, but you do not stake your entire identity on the job title. You know that roles change, companies shift, and industries transform. This awareness allows you to perform without the desperate fear of failure, because your self-worth is not welded to the outcome. If the job ends, you grieve the loss, you extract the lessons, and you move forward, your core frame intact, ready to embrace the next season of your professional life. This fluidity is the hallmark of incredible resilience. Ultimately, this practice builds a frame that is like a strong, flexible reed in the wind rather than a rigid oak tree. The oak tree resists the storm until it cracks. The reed bends with the wind, accepting its force, and springs back when the storm has passed. By embracing impermanence, you learn to bend with the changes of life. You appreciate the beauty of a sunset precisely because you know it will be gone in minutes. You cherish a phase of your child's life because you understand it will never come again. You can celebrate a success without believing it defines you forever, and you can endure a failure without believing it ruins you permanently. Your happiness becomes decoupled from the transient states of your external world and anchored instead in the enduring quality of your character and your capacity to be present. You move through life with a lighter step and a more open heart, able to love things deeply precisely because you are not desperately clinging to them, building a resilience that is not rigid and brittle, but fluid, adaptable, and profoundly at peace with the beautiful, ever-changing flow of existence. Now we turn our attention to a form of strength that is often misunderstood as weakness, a practice where power is demonstrated not through what you say, but through what you consciously choose not to say. This is Technique 23, the profound practice of silence. In our hyper-connected, noise-filled world, we are conditioned to believe that we must always have a ready reply, that winning an argument means having the last word, and that staying silent is equivalent to conceding defeat or lacking an opinion. The Stoics, however, saw silence as a strategic discipline, a calculated and powerful tool for maintaining your inner equilibrium and external composure. It is the art of knowing when your words will build up and when they will only tear down, and having the self-control to act accordingly. The first and most immediate benefit of this practice is its function as a guardian of your integrity. In the heat of an argument, when emotions are raw and adrenaline is surging, our primitive brain takes over, urging us to lash out, to score points, to inflict verbal wounds that mirror the hurt we feel. This is the moment when we are most likely to say something cruel, something we can never take back, a poisoned arrow that might feel justified in the moment but will haunt the relationship long after the initial conflict has faded. Choosing silence in this charged atmosphere is not a surrender, it is a tactical withdrawal to higher ground. It is the ultimate application of the Stoic pause, extended into a sustained state of non-reaction. By refusing to engage in the escalating cycle of hurtful words, you are not losing the argument. You are winning a far more important battle, the battle for your own character. You are proving that your self-worth is not so fragile that it needs to be defended with viciousness, and that you have the power to break a destructive pattern that the other person may be powerless to stop. Let's give this a concrete scenario. You're having a heated disagreement with your partner. They say something unkind, a low blow that hits a personal insecurity. The immediate, untrained urge is to retaliate with an even more cutting remark to make them feel the same pain you're feeling. This is the crossroads. If you speak, you might win the momentary skirmish, but you will have inflicted lasting damage on the foundation of trust. Now, imagine instead that you take a deep breath and simply stop talking. You allow their words to hang in the air unanswered. This silence is deafening. It creates a space that is uncomfortable but necessary. In that space, several things happen. First, you prevent yourself from causing irreversible harm. Second, your calm refusal to escalate often has the effect of deflating the other person's anger, leaving them alone with the echo of their own harsh words. Third, and most importantly, it gives you the mental clarity to assess the real issue beneath the surface-level insult. Are you arguing about the dishes, or are you arguing about feeling unappreciated? Silence gives you the room to discern the difference, and when you do choose to speak again, to address the root cause from a place of centered strength rather than reactive fury. Beyond the battlefield of arguments, the practice of silence serves as a powerful filter against the toxicity of gossip. Gossip is often disguised as social bonding, but at its core, it is a low-energy activity that erodes trust and diminishes your character. When someone tries to pull you into a conversation criticizing a mutual acquaintance who isn't present, your participation, however slight, makes you complicit. It subtly wires your brain to seek connection through judgment rather than through genuine, positive interaction. Choosing silence in this context or gently changing the subject is a clear declaration of your values. It signals that you are not a person who derives satisfaction from the misfortunes or missteps of others. A simple, calm response like, "I prefer not to speculate about their situation," or "I've always found them to be perfectly reasonable," can shut down a gossip chain without creating confrontation. This builds a reputation for discretion and integrity that will make people trust you with their real struggles, knowing you won't turn them into fodder for the next casual conversation. Your silence, in this case, becomes a magnet for more meaningful and respectful connections. Ultimately, mastering the practice of silence cultivates a presence that is both formidable and serene. It allows you to become an observer, to gather information without prematurely revealing your own position. In a tense business meeting, the person who speaks least often holds the most power because they are listening, processing, and formulating a response while others are simply reacting. This quiet observation is a source of immense strategic advantage, but more than that, it fosters a deep inner quietude. By regularly disengaging from the compulsive need to comment, to opine, to fill every empty space with sound, you create a sanctuary of stillness within yourself. You learn that your value is not measured by the volume of your voice, but by the quality of your thoughts and the integrity of your actions. In a world that never stops talking, the ability to be comfortably, powerfully silent is a superpower. It is the mark of a person who is so secure in their own frame that they do not need the constant validation of being heard, allowing their influence to grow from the quiet authority of their character. But building this unbreakable frame is not a destination you arrive at one day after checking off a list of techniques. It is not a certificate you earn and then hang on the wall, forever certified as Stoic. The reality is that your frame, like your physical body, requires consistent daily nourishment to remain strong. Just as a single healthy meal does not make you fit for life, a single exposure to these ideas will not permanently reshape your mind. The world we live in is a constant, relentless stream of distractions, pressures, and triggers that will, if you are not vigilant, slowly erode your resolve and pull you back into reactive, unhealthy patterns. This is why our 24th technique is perhaps the most fundamental habit of all, the committed, lifelong practice of reading and rereading foundational Stoic philosophy. Think of your mind as a garden. The principles of Stoicism are the seeds of strong, resilient plants: wisdom, courage, justice, and discipline. You can plant these seeds with great care, but if you then abandon the garden, what happens? Weeds of anxiety, entitlement, fear, and anger will inevitably sprout and choke out your carefully planted virtues. The daily habit of reading Stoic texts is the diligent work of weeding and watering that garden. It is the proactive maintenance required to keep the soil of your mind fertile and your character thriving. This isn't about acquiring new information in the way you might study for an exam. It is about reinforcement. It is about reminding yourself again and again of truths that are simple to understand but incredibly difficult to consistently live by. We forget so easily. We get caught up in the drama of the day and lose sight of the cosmic perspective. We need a daily anchor to pull us back to reality. This is where the power of the original texts comes in. While modern interpretations and summaries can be helpful, there is an undeniable potency in going directly to the source, to Marcus Aurelius's private journal in Meditations, to Epictetus's sharp, uncompromising lessons in the Discourses and Enchiridion, or to Seneca's profound letters. These are not abstract theoretical documents. They are field manuals written by men who were in the arena of life, facing immense power, exile, betrayal, and pain. Reading a passage from Marcus Aurelius is like having a wise, calm emperor whisper in your ear right before you walk into a stressful meeting. Reading Epictetus is like receiving a bracingly clear instruction from a no-nonsense coach who refuses to let you make excuses. This daily contact keeps the voices of your Stoic mentors alive and present in your mind, ensuring their guidance is readily available when you need it most. The key to making this habit stick is to make it effortless and non-negotiable. Do not set an ambitious goal of reading 50 pages a day. That is a recipe for failure. The goal is consistency, not volume. Commit to reading just one passage, one page, or even one paragraph each day. Many people find the first 5 minutes of their morning to be the perfect time, setting the tone for the entire day ahead. Keep a copy of Meditations on your bedside table or bookmark a Stoic website on your phone. The act itself is quick, but its impact is profound. As you read that small passage, don't just skim the words. Pause and reflect. Ask yourself, how does this apply to a challenge I am facing today? For example, if you read Marcus's reminder that the obstacle is the way, you might immediately think of a difficult conversation you've been avoiding and reframe it as an opportunity to practice courage. This process of active reflection is what turns passive reading into active training. Over time, this daily ritual does something remarkable to your mind. The principles cease to be external concepts you have to consciously recall. They become an internalized operating system. You will start to notice that in moments of pressure, the right Stoic idea will simply pop into your head without you having to search for it. A frustrating delay will trigger an automatic recall of the dichotomy of control. A moment of temptation will bring to mind a line from Seneca on the value of self-discipline. This is the fruit of your daily reading. The principles have been woven into the very fabric of your subconscious, becoming your default way of perceiving and responding to the world. It is the difference between having to look up a phone number every time you need to call someone and having that number memorized and instantly accessible. This constant, gentle reinforcement ensures that your unbreakable frame is not a static structure, but a living, growing, and adapting part of who you are, capable of weathering any storm because you tend to its foundation every single day. And so we arrive at the final technique, the essential bookend to the nightly review that prepares you not to reflect on the day, but to command it from the very beginning. This is the morning preparation, or as the Stoics might have called it, premeditatio, deemed the premeditation of the day. If the evening review is your daily debrief, this morning ritual is your mission briefing. It's a deliberate and powerful process where you step into the director's chair of your own life before the day's scenes begin to unfold. Instead of waking up and being immediately swept into the current of emails, notifications, and demands, you take 10 minutes of quiet solitude to consciously map the territory ahead, and most importantly, to fortify your mind for the inevitable challenges you will face. The core of this practice is a form of mental inoculation. You begin by calmly surveying the day's landscape, what appointments are scheduled, what tasks require your focus. Then you go beyond the schedule and actively anticipate the potential friction points. Is there a difficult conversation you've been putting off that might need to happen today? Is there a tedious, energy-draining task on your list that you're dreading? Perhaps you're facing a project with a high degree of uncertainty, or you'll be interacting with someone who typically tests your patience. The key is not to imagine these scenarios with anxiety, as if you're doom scrolling through your own future. Rather, you approach them with the calm detachment of a strategist reviewing a game plan. You are identifying the training grounds where your stoic muscles will be tested. This is where the practice moves from passive forecasting to active empowerment. For each potential challenge you identify, you don't just acknowledge it, you pre-commit to your virtuous response. This is the moment you script your own reaction. Let's say you anticipate a tough meeting with a critical colleague. In the quiet of your morning, you mentally rehearse the encounter. You see them making a dismissive comment. And then you see yourself taking the stoic pause. You feel yourself taking a deep breath. You hear yourself applying objective judgment, describing their comment as neutral sound waves rather than a personal attack. You consciously choose to respond with calm curiosity, saying, "I appreciate that perspective. Can you help me understand your specific concern?" You are wiring your neural pathways for composure before the trigger ever fires. You are not hoping to be virtuous in the moment, you are programming yourself to be virtuous. The same applies to internal challenges. If you know you have a mountain of boring administrative work ahead, you pre-commit to facing it with the virtue of discipline. You reframe it not as a punishment, but as an opportunity to strengthen your focus and your ability to find contentment in necessary tasks. You might even link it to Amor Fati, telling yourself, "Good. This boring work is a chance to prove that my peace does not depend on constant excitement." By doing this, you are laying down tracks for your mind to follow. When you actually encounter the boring task later in the day, it's not an ambush, it's an expected drill, and your pre-commitment makes it far easier to access the disciplined response you've already chosen. The profound benefit of this morning ritual is that it fundamentally shifts your orientation to the day from reactive to proactive. Most people spend their lives as pinballs, bouncing from one event to the next, their emotional state determined by whatever bumper they happen to hit. The morning preparation transforms you into the pinball player. You are the one holding the flippers, aware of the obstacles on the board, ready to use them to your advantage. You step into the day not with a naive hope that everything will go smoothly, but with a confident readiness for whatever may come. A sudden problem is no longer a crisis. It's simply a scenario you are mentally prepared to handle with grace. This doesn't create a rigid, scripted day. Life will always throw surprises, but it builds a flexible strength that allows you to adapt without losing your center, because your core intention to respond with virtue is already locked in. This daily practice ensures that your unbreakable frame isn't just a theory you reflect on at night, but a living, breathing reality you enact from the moment you open your eyes. And so we arrive at the end of our journey through these 25 techniques, returning full circle to the powerful image we began with, the unbreakable frame. But I hope you now see this not as a distant, unattainable ideal, but as a tangible reality that you are fully equipped to build, brick by mental brick, starting right now. These are not 25 magic tricks or quick fixes. They are not a secret code that will instantly make life's challenges disappear. To think of them that way would be to miss the entire point. What we have explored together is something far more substantial and enduring. A comprehensive training regimen for the mind, a lifelong workout plan for your character. Just as you cannot expect to develop a strong, resilient body by going to the gym once, you cannot forge an unbreakable frame by reading about these ideas and simply hoping they stick. The true transformation happens in the space between knowledge and action, in the quiet, consistent application of these practices day after day after day. It is the cumulative effect of the morning preparation, the evening review, the conscious pauses, and the reframed perspectives that gradually rewires your default responses. It's in the repetition that the Stoic principles cease to be concepts you think about and become the automatic way you see the world. The frame is not built in a single, dramatic moment of triumph. It is forged in the countless small choices you make when no one is watching. The choice to respond with patience instead of anger, to see the opportunity in the obstacle, to guard your inner citadel against the noise of the world. This is your call to action, not as a passive viewer, but as an active participant in the most important project you will ever undertake, the construction of your own character. The world does not need more people who are easily swayed by every trend, shattered by every criticism, or defeated by every setback. The world needs more people of substance, more people who cannot be broken. It needs individuals who can stand firm in their principles, act with compassion under pressure, and contribute a steady, positive force amid the chaos. That journey begins with a single, deliberate step. Do not feel overwhelmed by the list of 25. The power lies in starting with one. Pick one technique that resonates with you right now. Maybe it's the Stoic pause, the practice of taking that one breath before you react. Perhaps it's the dichotomy of control, that fundamental act of sorting what is yours to command from what is not. Or maybe it's the simple, profound act of keeping an evening journal. Whatever it is, commit to practicing it with intention for the next week. Make it your own. Your journey is unique, and I would love to hear about it. Share in the comments below which one technique you are going to try first. Your commitment can inspire others to begin their own path. And if you found this guide valuable, subscribe to the channel. This is just the beginning. We have so much more practical wisdom to explore together, more strategies to strengthen your mind and build a life of purpose and peace. The work of building an unbreakable frame is the work of a lifetime, but it is a work that pays the richest dividends imaginable, a profound inner freedom that no external circumstance can ever take from you. The tools are in your hands, the training has begun. Now go and build.